I always knew that was going to happen, that not having a boss, not having somebody tell you what to do appeals to me. It appeals to my character. The question was when.
What were you like in school? What was your attitude to the teachers? Did they like you, or did they say, oh gosh, here comes Kate Rooney?
Justice is a huge value of mine. And if I saw injustice in the school, I was the first to, get the placard out, so to speak.
What about your classmates?
My best friend that I met at school at 13, I'm still best friends with now. I met her being bullied in the toilets and I intervened to help.
My guest today is Kate Rooney. Kate, you're very welcome on the GYFT Show.
Very glad to be here, John. And relationships, what a topic.
Great, indeed. So tell us, at what stage in your life did you find yourself? What relationship broke you to discover yourself?
Actually, I was only talking about this last night. 16. I was 16 years old.
Very good.
And at 16 years old, you've lots of things going on. Who am I? What's my identity? And the hormones are raging as well. And I was with a first boyfriend. We went to his house and his father said, "Who's this?" And my then boyfriend said, "This is the fortune teller's daughter." My dad was a fortune teller, John,
Very
and
good.
my identity was the fortune teller's daughter. And his dad said, "What is her name?" That was the first time I can remember being asked what my name was. So that was a pivotal moment. I then realized I had an identity outside of the tag that I'd been given. So that was a big moment.
That's a big change in life to be recognized as Kate Rooney, not the fortune teller's daughter. Yeah,
Huge.
so you realized there and then you were your own person, effectively.
Yes.
So what was your childhood like? What was your relationship like with your parents and siblings?
I had one sister and I've two brothers that didn't live with us. My mum had them before she met my father. So a lot of strange relationships, because we didn't grow up with the two boys and yet we would maybe see them on Sundays, so that was strange because what are they, half brothers? Are they brothers? So even the dynamic around, what's the term? And yet having a sister that was younger than me. So I would say that was quite complex, John. And even to this day is quite complex. My mum and dad were very, very different characters. My sister had a really good relationship with my mum, like they would have talked about, boys and nights out. And I never talked to mum about anything like that. It would have been school or lunch or what was making me for my dinner, but we didn't have that closeness that my sister and her would have had. And my dad's being the fortune teller, that's not a joke, that's a reality. You were always kind of having to be a couple of steps ahead of him because he was always a couple of steps ahead of you. So I would call it probably a very conscious relationship. It wasn't, easy. You were consciously aware a lot of the time. So yeah, I would say complicated and complex, John, but character building.
I know my own mum, like my maternal grandmother, was married twice. Her first husband died of an illness very quickly, and then she remarried some years later. She had two children from her first marriage and four from her second marriage. But my grandfather was always of the opinion that the two children from the first marriage were part of the overall family. There was no difference.
Yeah.
Everybody was going to be a brother or sister, not a
Yeah.
half brother or half sister.
No, that we
That's
didn't
how he
have
looked
that.
at life.
Our setup was not like that at all. And my dad did not want to rear the two boys, so that put a complication into that as well. My granny actually reared both boys, so yeah, quite complicated.
Indeed, moving along here. So you went to school. What were you like in school? What was your attitude to the teachers? Did they like you, or did they say, "Oh gosh, here comes Kate Rooney"?
I'd say I was the rebel with the cause, John. I was good at school. I loved school. I was one of those students that really loved education and love education to this day. I'm still in education as we speak. But I was very able and willing to stand up for my rights, to stand up for other people's rights. Justice is a huge value of mine. And if I saw injustice in the school, I was the first to, get the placard out, so to speak. So I'd say they liked me, but also thought, oh gosh, what's she coming with this time? Yeah, so yeah.
What about your classmates?
I had lots of friends. I made friends easily at school, and I was part of different groups, lots of different groups. And even friends to this day will always describe me as, the person that would, if there was a fight in the playground, I'd be the first person in trying to split it up. If somebody was being bullied, I'd be the first person in trying to split it up. My best friend that I met at school at 13, I'm still best friends with now. I met her being bullied in the toilets and I intervened to help. So I probably had that reputation from a very early age,
In school, I was quite a serious individual, probably still am to an extent. Got my head down and did my work to the best of my ability. And unlike yourself there, Kate, I wouldn't be the person who would stand up and take a cause. I'd be kind of reticent to do that. I would maybe do it if I was pushed to do it. But in school, I kind of kept my head down and did my own thing, really.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have had many friends in school, to be honest, just had maybe one or two, and that was it. I wouldn't be the most outgoing person by nature. So you moved along into the workplace, presumably after school.
Yes.
Relationships like initially in a very busy retail sector.
Yeah, that's where personal brands started to become very, very important. When I kind of left my hometown, so to speak, I didn't tell people that my dad was a fortune teller. I was quite embarrassed by it, John. It felt a wee bit odd. And you got into a conversation with people and some people didn't get it. I come from Northern Ireland. There's, the Catholicism in Northern Ireland would be frowning upon such things, priests, etc. So there was reasons I kind of kept that secret and was embarrassed by it to an extent. So I felt certainly in my early days that I was hiding who I really wasn't being truthful, wasn't being honest. And it became very clear to me probably around early 20s, maybe 2021, actually my background, the fact that it was different, the fact that it was odd gave me a uniqueness, which is fantastic when you're trying to think about personal brands, because being memorable, standing out, having a good story, not blending in are all the components that you want. And I realized actually this thing that I had as a child that I was embarrassed about is magic. It's my uniqueness. This is my magic wand. And then I started to, I suppose, what would you call it? Just kind of bed into it, accept it, and not even accept it, champion it, and stopped keeping it secret, and now speak very freely about it. Yeah, so yeah, a nice journey.
And were you one of those people who loved their work, or did you go to work for love?
I never did a day's work in my life, John, that I didn't enjoy. I was a workaholic. I loved working. And I don't mean a workaholic as in, you just have to do it. I love being busy. I love producing things. I loved people. I loved the interaction. I genuinely don't think I worked a day in my entire life that I didn't enjoy. And still to this day, I love working. And people, if you say, tell me something about Kate, they'll say, Jesus, she loves working, and always did, and would have been considered a hard worker, a good worker. Never took the mick. If I clocked in, I clocked in. I was present, and I would put in a good day's work.
That's a great way to look at the retail industry, because I would assume that you have to be a real people person to survive and to thrive in the retail sector. And of course, it's pretty hands-on at times, working in stock rooms, working on the floor, dealing with customer issues, dealing with staff issues. You've got to be able to, you've got to be able to put, have many fingers and many pies, I suppose you could say, and to take on many different issues at the same time and to solve problems.
Absolutely. And I would have tapped into my, emotional intelligence a lot as a manager and as a leader out in the area, whenever I'd have been doing multi-site, that emotional intelligence bit that I believe I gained a huge amount from my childhood really, really helped me. So those things that life that I had as a child that I thought was difficult and complex actually was the making of me and gave me a lot of the skills that I now have today.
So effectively what you're saying there, Kate, is that resilience you built up during your childhood because of the complex family situation you had, that gave you a bit of steel, a bit of streetwideness that you could call upon in the retail sector at the workplace.
Hugely. It meant that there was a lot. I was quite diverse as a child, growing up in Northern Ireland with a fortune tellers, a fortune teller as a father is not the norm. So I embraced diversity, so when I seen somebody different coming into the workplace, I didn't see it as, what are we going to do here? I saw it as a huge, positive. This is somebody different with a different mindset and from a different country, from a different race, from a different, whatever sexual orientation. I saw that as brilliant, excellent. This is a different opinion at the table, and we want different opinions at the table. So I was very open to diversity very early on, before it became the buzz, the good thing to do.
Yeah, from my own experience of going out in the workplace, because as a child, I was very quiet, even into my teenage years. So I found it hard initially to assert myself in the workplace. That was a big learning curve for myself. And then when I went to London in the 1980s, in the late 1980s, it opened a whole new world to me because, Dublin at the time was quite a small city. Yes. It was predominantly Irish people working and living in Dublin. You had a small amount of emigres into Ireland at the time, nothing compared to today's Dublin, of course. But when I went to London, then it opened a whole new world to me. And very quickly, I became quite a cosmopolitan person. And to this day, I have that kind of cosmopolitan outlook on life. Mm-hmm. I would be a person who would be very welcoming to emigres, to people from different backgrounds, different races, different religions. I don't judge people for that. I'd always be welcome to those people. So moving along here, what was your love life like?
Well, I didn't really. I had maybe a couple of boyfriends, if you want to call it boyfriends, because I was kind of always a rebel. If the girls were kind of going out with loads of guys, I thought, well, I'm not doing what everyone's doing. I'm going to be different. I suppose in that area, with regards to boyfriends, I wouldn't have been very, very confident. Like my confidence didn't extend to that. And it was more because I wasn't willing to do the flirting. And, I couldn't be bothered with it. I'm like a deep talker. I didn't like the superficial, side of it. So I had one or two boyfriends growing up. And I'm with my current partner 25 years, so I met him when I was 20 and we've been together ever since. We're not married and we don't have children. I'm keeping my options open, John, just in case.
Of course.
But yeah, so we're 25 years together, but I could count on one hand, the amount of people you would term a boyfriend, if you want to give it that term. So I wasn't one of those, I don't mean those girls, but that didn't really interest me. And I wasn't super confident in that area.
Fair play to you, and good luck and continued good luck with your present relationship. Indeed, so all good.
Yes.
Fair play to you. So what convinced you then to take the deep plunge from being in employment to self-employment? There's a completely different relationship in terms of you're your own boss. There's nobody there to answer to, nobody there in the morning time to get you out of bed. So what did you learn from that relationship of moving from employment to self-employment?
I always knew that was going to happen, that not having a boss, not having somebody tell you what to do appeals to me. It appeals to my character. I wanted to kind of beat my own drum, follow my own arrow, do my own thing. So that was always going to happen. The question was when will I do it? And the timing came round that allowed me to do it. The learnings, probably the hard work and the work ethic I had from being employed, I was able to take into self-employment. And because if you're self-employed, anyone out there that's self-employed knows that if you want to make it a success, you have to work hard and you have to have a decent work ethic. And I would say the biggest attribute is discipline, being disciplined with what you're saying you're going to do, how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it. As you say, John, if you don't get out of bed, nobody's ringing to see why you didn't clock in. So discipline is really, really important. And I think one of the success factors for a lot of entrepreneurs and individuals that have gone out by themselves.
It's a very interesting point, because I was talking to Louise Lally about this the other day, and she was saying the exact same thing, that it's discipline first, motivation follows. I would add to that, when you go from employment to self-employment, you've got to bring your skill set from your previous work into your new vocation in life, whatever that may be. But at the same time, you have to develop new skill sets. One final question here for you, Kate. Name one relationship you would like to have again, given another chance. And what would you do better this time around?
It would definitely be my grandmother, my mum's mother. So Elizabeth Law was her original name, but she was Elizabeth McFadden married. And she was a devoutly spiritual lady. And when you get to kind of your teenage years, you want to do your own thing. You're going out, you've got friends, and that relationship becomes less, especially if you don't live, close. But the small amount of time that I did spend with her, I learned so many valuable lessons. And if I was able to go back, John, I'd spend more time with that woman, because there was much more to learn that I didn't, give the time to. So I would love to spend a bit more time with Elizabeth Law, without a doubt.
It's a very interesting answer, I should say. Well done on that, because I know what you're saying there. I have my own memory of my own maternal grandmother, and she was blind. And we used to go down there to Roscommon to visit her. I always remember we would shake hands with her when we were going back to Dublin, of course. And she knew by the firmness of her hands which of us was
Lovely.
Shaking hands to her and talking to her at the same time. She just knew, because she was blind,
Yes.
her actual feeling skill set was much more developed.
Yes.
So that's always a very interesting memory of my own grandmother. And you've got great memories of your maternal grandmother also, and the fact that you learned so much from her over the years. So on that note, this brings today's conversation to a close. Well done.
Thank you very much, John. Thanks for having me.
The one thing that really did have an impact on me, I did one of those years traveling overseas as a young guy, and we did a lot of stupid stuff. No, we really did. And it took us 2 months of living in Sydney before I got to the Opera House. And now, it wasn't to go and see a show or anything like that. I didn't even go and walk around the outside of it, because we were partying hard and being silly. And it's just sort of, hold on a second. There are gifts on this planet that are utterly gorgeous, but you've got to appreciate things like that. Otherwise, you're just a bit of an idiot. And I was at that stage. So that was on reflection. So that during my traveling time, I grew up a lot.